All right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining my session. I'm really excited today to be sharing my journey from Google to Radar, where I built the PM function from the ground up. So reminder, in order to see my slides, you can double click on the screen and you can maximize it. So by way of introduction, I'm Charlene. I'm the Senior Director of Product at Radar, where I lead the product and design team. Before joining Radar, I was at Google for over 6 years, where I worked across 4 different offices in Asia and the US, and most recently coming from Google technology with a focus on human-computer interaction and users. So that brings me here today is that, despite all the different experiences I've had at Google, it wasn't until I stepped into the role that I really learned what it takes to build an entire product organization from scratch. And so this is why I'm particularly excited to share with you all more about what I've learned. So today I'll be sharing my journey and the top lessons I've learned along the way. I'll also be leaving 5 minutes at the end for any questions. You can pop them into the side chat. And the last thing is that this deck and other templates and resources I'll be mentioning today will be available later on my site. You can scan the QR code there below and also share the link at the end of the presentation. So if we rewind and start on my journey of joining Radar, I joined shortly after Radar had just raised their Series B, and I was brought on to be the first PM to build out the product org. And very early on, COVID hit, and my first weeks at the company looked like this. Not actually like this. This is not a real screenshot with my team, but it really felt like me and a lot of tiny Zoom boxes as I was trying to meet the engineering team and design team. So really, how do you build a product function from this? On top of that, I started realizing that being a PM is very different from building a true product organization, because when you're a PM, regardless if you're junior or running a very large team, chances are you're stepping into an existing system with existing tools and processes in place. But when you build a brand new product org, it can feel like you're starting from nothing. Everything needs to be built, all the processes, the principles, the metrics, even the culture is non-existent, or at best, it's barely there. So where do you start? So lesson 1 is around ruthless prioritization. One of my favorite quotes that I follow is from Stephen Covey, who wrote the popular book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He said that the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. And it's true. When everything seems to be P0 or it's on fire or you're drinking from the fire hose, the only thing to do is to keep the main thing the main thing. And with a new organization, that starts with goal setting, which just really stem from the company mission and vision. And that should translate to then what's the business goal you're going after and the problems you're trying to solve for the user. And from there, you can set the product goals. So for example, Radar's mission is to connect digital experiences to the physical world. Our vision is to build a platform, a location platform for every app, every device, and every developer. So our business goal is to grow our revenue by next summer, and we're really trying to help engineering leaders build location features and build them more easily. So our product goal from there is to help developers get started using our platform and APIs as quickly as possible. And so knowing the goal is what helps you set both the strategy and the operations for a team, so you can set the North Star and a plan for how to get there. Now, this all sounds great theoretically. And so why does having a goal help you prioritize? And the reason is it's how you say no. When you have a goal, you can clearly state what's a top priority and what's not, and then prioritize accordingly. So this is a prioritization framework I introduced to Radar to help our teams across sales, BD, customer success better understand the motivations of what we build and why. So essentially, we want to be motivated to build features because it will have a high return based on our goals. So this means having high ROI, high strategic value, and everything else we don't build. So we don't build things out of fear. We don't build things if it's out of scope. Likewise, you can also prioritize at an even more tactical level with your team. And so this is a decision chart that Eisenhower actually used to prioritize his time. And so when I first started, one of the top challenges that my team brought up, which happens at a lot of early stage companies, is that they were stretched too thin. And so my answer to that is we need to prioritize. So I asked my team to write down all the things they spent their time doing. I asked them to cross-reference it with our OKRs, which we use to set our quarterly goals, and prioritize which ones got us closer to our goals based on this matrix. So the top things, do first. Medium things, do later. And things that weren't actually supposed to be their job, either delegate to me or just eliminate altogether. And this is the result after the exercise. So lesson 1 to building a product function, ruthlessly prioritize. Help your team do it and help your cross-functional partners do it. And so lesson 2 is to bring order to the chaos. The first item to really bring structure is around metrics so that you can measure the impact of your work. Likely some metrics will already be in place, but they may or may not be aligned to the goal that you've now set. So a few principles when realigning metrics is first, be aware that there's a tendency to want to measure everything under the sun, but also remember that the point of metrics is to inform a future action, meaning, if your activation number is up or it's down, what will we do differently? The next thing is that in the beginning, you might have some hypotheses of what's the problem. And a good thing to do is do an initial pulse check and go broad across all the product areas and be in favor of simplifying and bucketing metrics versus getting too scientific. Because once you can gauge which areas you should focus on, either top of the funnel or bottom of the funnel, you can go deeper and define better metrics and proxies for human behavior. And lastly, and most importantly, it's crucial as you set up the PM org to make sure that everyone is speaking the same language when talking about numbers. So this means getting very crisp about definitions of how you define a new user or an activation, and be crisp with why. So this means writing it down, referencing it again, and clarifying when people use the term. So once you have metrics in place, then it's about tightening the product shipping process. So this means being able to map out the entire life cycle of a product from ideation through design, through testing to launch. And you do this because it keeps engineers, design, marketing, and sales all aligned. And beyond just having the different stages clearly marked, it's also important to know where the checkpoints are with stakeholders, to think through who needs to be involved in the early process as a decision maker versus who needs to be just kept informed, and then formalizing these groups. So for us here at Radar, we have the engineer who's going to work on the feature sit in as early as the exploratory review when we're doing competitive analyses or getting inspiration or ideas from the team. And we do this because it helps the whole team stay in the loop and equally invested in the product. But having this process in place isn't enough on its own. Equally important is also introducing product principles to guide how we build the product. And one of the foremost guiding principles for us at Radar is a toothbrush test, which is about focused utility. So this means all products need to pass the toothbrush test, which means that the value of the product needs to be so easy to recognize that it's a no-brainer. It's as natural as brushing your teeth in the morning. And this is the bar at which we aspire to when we build products here at Radar. And it's important to have the right principles in place and continually push the team to strive toward these highest levels of excellence. And so once you have all these processes in place, then it's about repeatability. So you and your teams can move faster. So this means creating templates for how you write specs, templates to do sprint planning and product updates and how you run reviews. Again, all of these templates will be available later on my site. So lesson 2 is about bringing in the right level of process to bring structure and clarity to the team so they can stay focused on the goal and they can move quickly. And lesson 3 is about being the voice of the user. So I've talked a little bit about product excellence and how we need to strive toward it. And at Radar, we talk a lot about product excellence as knowing what's important to your users and focusing on what's really going to solve their problem. So having product excellence is about creating a group mindset and needs to be practiced regularly. And only in this way can you truly build a product culture and have it baked into the thinking of your engineers, your designers, as well as your cross-functional teams. And this you to zoom in to the mindset of your users. For us, it's inviting us to think about why do our customers use Radar and how do they use it? Why don't they use Radar and why do they leave? And what motivates our customers to buy or upgrade or churn? And we approach understanding our users both in a qualitative and quantitative approach. We usually start with quantitative to see if we can spot patterns that really push us to ask why. Why did you use this product first? Why are you 3 times more likely to engage with us if you download our mobile app versus trying us on desktop? And then we use the qual studies to really go deeper. So our rule of thumb is to do deep sessions with around 5 users, and usually we try to pick users that are on the extreme ends of the spectrum, since they're most likely to be the most sensitive and usually will capture the sentiment of the average. And then equipped with the research and the quant data, you can then start crafting personas that you can then refine over time as you dig deeper into the various segmentations. One thing at the same, to realize at the same time is that it's important to recognize that crucial sources of information about your users already exist within your team. So likely your sales or your customer support team are fielding questions from customers, or they're routing reported bugs already, and they have a wealth of knowledge about how users are engaging with your product. So it's key when you're building up the product org to create processes for your wider team so that these valuable pieces of feedback get collected in the right forums and can then be addressed accordingly and fed back into the product roadmap. So lesson 3 is to deeply understand your users so you can best champion their needs. And finally, when building up a product organization, lesson 4 is to invest in your people and your team. So for example, here's an email I sent one person on my team the first week I started to really get to know them, not just as an employee, but as a person who has goals, life interests, and motivations. And this is a set of questions I like to ask to better understand them so that I, as a manager, really know how to best support them, because part of building up an organization is fostering trust amongst everyone. Now, these things that I'm talking about, building trust, being invested in your team's well-being, these might sound like very obvious things, but these are also supported by data. So a few years back, Google's people team went out to collect the top most important attributes of managers. And they found that manager quality has a clear impact on team performance, where the top performing teams had managers that exhibited these 8 traits, which are referenced as the oxygen attributes. And the interesting thing to note is that technical skills came in last. So while it's important that managers have the needed technical ability to guide employees, it's really the soft skills such as coaching, communication, investment in each individual's success and well-being. These are the things that are absolutely essential to a team's overall success, which means that being a great PM doesn't necessarily make you a great manager. And to build out a high-performing product org means being a good manager to your team. And it's also important to be building out a team culture and making the environment a fun place to work. And this is especially important in times now where we're all working from home for the most part. And so doing as much as you can to create a sense of team identity and cohesion, whether that be something as silly as photoshopping your team's faces onto famous paintings, or just doing simple roundtable style icebreakers during weekly stand-up. These are the small things that we started doing at Radar, and they're all slowly adding up to create a sense of unity and team culture, which is crucial, especially during a time when we're mostly remote. And so in summary, yes, building everything from scratch might seem overwhelming when there's so much to juggle across people and processes and metrics. These are a few lessons I found that have really made the journey a lot easier. 1, prioritize what's really important. 2, systematically introduce structure where it's needed. 3, spend time to understand and truly champion your users. 4, invest in the people who make the organization run. Thanks everyone for joining today's session. And so I'd love to hear from you on your experience, whether you're about to start this journey yourself or are currently already on it. Here I've listed my contact information where you can reach me. And as mentioned earlier, this deck and other resources will be posted on my site soon at charlenelee.me. You can scan the QR code here to access the site. And one last quick plug, we're also hiring at Radar. You can check out our site for a number of job postings. And with that, I can take some Q&A from the group. Okay, so let me just take a look here. Good. One question here. How often do you do user research? So that's a great question. Oftentimes I will bring it back to, what is the problem we're trying to solve? If there are a number of different questions that we can't figure out just from looking at quant data, then we can specify a clear research goal and then go pick the correct methodology to go answer that question, whether it be user interviews or watching a user session or talking to our sales or support team. And so sometimes it means if we have a lot of questions, then we can be doing user research more frequently. Sometimes if we're more in the execution mode, then we're not looking at user research as often. With that said, it's important to always keep open channels for feedback to come in, or questions, or questions that you might want to take a look at. Let's see, another question. Any advice for someone not in a product role right now looking to break in? That's a great question. So I think that there are some soft skills and hard skills you can take a deeper look into. The soft skills are usually the curiosity that comes with someone who's interested in being a product manager or being a PM. I would say, that kind of inquisitive muscle is already deeply baked into you, and I would encourage you to more lean into it as much as you can. In terms of the actual hard skills, I actually did not start in a traditional product function. I started in marketing role, and I did a 6-month rotation assignment to be a PM. So this was time at Google, and was introduced to more of the role in a more formal way. And I would say by being able to learn the ropes in real time, it definitely helped me along my journey to be a PM. So would encourage you to seek out those types of opportunities, whether it's volunteering yourself to go do user research, or volunteering yourself to suggest some new product ideas and explain why you think it's a good product idea. These are ways that you can be a PM without actually being in the role of PM, and that allows you to try that out yourself. And so I would really think about looking for those types of opportunities yourself, and also of course, formally look at roles available. Let's see. Question came in. Can you talk a bit about the change from a big company like Google to working at a startup? It's a great question. So I would say one of the biggest aspects about working at a big company is that there are so many resources available. At Google, we had a lot of the functions such as user research already established. We had functions like doing field studies versus doing internal research operations already there. And being at Radar now at a startup, building all of these functions from scratch really encourages you to think about prioritization, which means where do you start first? Because it seems like a lot of these functions need to get built. And so what I would say is one of the top things is about being really thoughtful about where to spend your energy. What can you do to actually be driving impact both for users and for the business? And so it really forces you to think about things in that lens. Let's see, another question. How do you think about taking the reins from co-founders who effectively ran product before making any dedicated product hires? It's a great question. So I would say the key thing before you're making that leap of whether, to be that first PM at a company is to really understand from the co-founders, what role do they need you to be playing? And being extremely crisp about the expected job responsibilities, what they really want you to be doing, and what value you can uniquely add to the team. And so I would say that was a huge reason why I did join Radar. For me, was that the company was at the stage of hyper growth, meaning they were going to grow 10x in the next coming months and years. And that really excited me. And for my background, I had always traditionally worked on go-to-market and bringing products to life and also growing them quickly. And so that challenge spoke to me and something that I was personally really excited about doing. And that was also being echoed by the co-founders as something that they wanted a PM leader to come in to really be doing this as well. And so that was kind of one chunk of it. Another thing is that I personally also love creating structure and bringing order to the chaos. And that was something also that Radar uniquely needed. And a lot of companies at that transition stage where they're moving from being a CEO run to bringing on a formal product leader, that's the type of thing that they usually need from someone. So that was something I was also really excited to do. Great, keep going down this list. How would you go about aligning an organization's leadership that doesn't have a product approach when you're the only product person and wanting to build that team from the ground up? So it's a great question. I think there are two parts to that. One is knowing your organization's leadership and what speaks to them, meaning what really pushes the envelope with them or convinces them of something. Are they more quant heavy? Do they need to see true quotes from a user? Do they need to be in a live session with users to believe something? And so there's a lot of different levers, I think, that you can pull, and it's all unique depending on the type of leadership organization that you have, and starting to pull in some strong data points in those ways. The other thing I would think a little bit about is trying to go after some small wins, meaning instead of trying to bring a huge, big idea that maybe there's some pushback around feasibility, or there's some pushback around, oh, it's important, but it's not important right now. See if you can try to go after some smaller things where you can prove viability systematically, whether that be a small feature idea or running a test and proving an experiment that validates a hypothesis you had around a user insight. And doing these types of small types of wins, I think, can help you build trust with your leadership organization and start fostering that product thinking and that mindset to really then start moving the entire organization to really be more product first. The tough thing is, as you mentioned, is that you're the only product person, and so that means bearing more of the responsibility on your own shoulders. But at the same time, I think there's a way to flip this into an opportunity for you to take on this challenge to really be thoughtful about how to instill this type of thinking with your leadership team and your cross-functional team. And then maybe the last thing I would also say is that even though you're the only product person, there probably are additional allies that don't wear the traditional hat of product, right? You probably might have some engineers who are also product thinking, or you might have some designers or some other cross-functional folks who also think in the mindset of product. And so what I would encourage you to also think through is, how can you build relationships with them? How can you collaborate with them on some types of these kind of product initiatives, and then slowly over time build and rally up the enthusiasm of your organization to go tackle some of these more product first types of questions. Okay. I think those are most of the main questions. With that, everyone, thank you so much for being here and joining me today. Like I said, all the resources mentioned here will be available on the site, and feel free to reach out with any other additional questions. Thank you.